Once again, good morning. Again, today is Tuesday, Rosh Chodesh Tamuz, the first day of the month of Tamuz. And it is, we'll begin today the chapter 10 in the Shaar, Hayichud, VAMUNA, the 10th chapter of the gateway of Yichud, the oneness of Hashem, and Emunah, and the faith in Hashem. And yesterday in the chapter 9, the Alter Rebbe spoke about what is it, the faith part that we're talking. It says in the Zohar that Roze Mehemnusa, the Sphiros, the attributes of Hashem are considered the Roze de Mehemnusa, which is the secret of the faith. And that is because the attributes of Hashem, on the one hand, we say that Hashem is not defined in any way by the attributes. The attribute of wisdom, the attributes of emotions. Not only you cannot say that you cannot understand Hashem, but you cannot even refer to Him with the term, with the realm of understanding, just like you cannot say something is so deep, an intellectual concept is so deep that you cannot touch it with your hands, which doesn't make sense at all, because it's not in the realm. So on the one hand, we say that we cannot grasp Hashem. Hashem is not defined by any of the attributes. But yet, in the same time, we say that Hashem is one with the attributes. It is one thing with Hashem. And this is something that we cannot understand, how these two work in the same time. And that's why we called it, this is the Roze Mehemnusa, the secret of the faith. And in today's chapter, the Alter Rebbe continues to say that despite the fact that we said that we cannot understand, there is some little bit of understanding that the Torah allows us, and is there, and this is by way of the Kabbalists using the term of light to describe the spheres, the attributes of Hashem. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain how using the term light is going to give us somewhat of an understanding in this concept that Hashem is one with His attributes, just like the light is one with the sun. So this is what the Alter Rebbe begins here in chapter 10. Let's share inside. We're going to see it inside. Okay, says the Alter Rebbe in chapter 10 of Shaar Yichud Emunah as follows. Mikol Makom. Nevertheless, despite the fact that the spheres transcends intellect and comprehension, as we said before, we cannot understand the his spheres, and yet cannot be defined by the spheres. Says the Alter Rebbe, Hoil v'dibra Torah keleshoin b'nei Adam, since the Torah is talking in human language, l'shakech ha'oizen ma shehi yechola lishmoya. Since the Torah speaks as in language of men in order to modulate for the ear what it is able to hear. Lekach, therefore, nitan reshus lechachmei ha'emes ledaber b'sfiros b'derech mashal. Permission has been granted to the Kabbalists. He calls the Kabbalist chachmei ha'emes, literally means the scholars of truth, because this is really scholars of truth, the ultimate truth of the Torah, to speak allegorically of the spheres. So, in other words, is using allegorically speaking, that it is going to use an allegory, because an allegory only will show us somewhat of connection between the metaphor and the moral, but not a perfect example, as we will see. And he says, "V'karu oisan oiros." The Kabbalists call the spheres lights, using terminology borrowed from the revelation of lights. The revelation of light shows us how Hashem brings about the spheres, his attributes, and he's united with his attributes. Kedei she'al yedei hamoshel hazeh yuvan lanu ktsas inyan hayichud shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu u'mideisav. So by the means of this metaphor, the nature of the unity of the whole one, blessed be he, and his attributes will be somewhat understood by us. Shehu b'derech mashal ke'yichud oir hashemesh shebetoich guf kader hashemesh im guf hashemesh shenikra moir. It is by way of illustration, like the unity of the sunlight that is within the solar globe, with a solar globe itself, which is called not only sun, but also a luminary, inasmuch as it emits light. As it is written that God created the greater luminary, meaning the very source of light. If you remember, in the previous chapters, we spoke about also a metaphor of the sun and the light, but there we mentioned about how the light does not have existence at all outside of the luminary. And we used it as a metaphor to show that the world, even though it comes from Hashem, but outside of Hashem it doesn't have, I'm saying the light of the sun does not have an existence at all while it's in the luminary, it's in the sun. It doesn't have its own existence at all. Here, what is the example that is using from the sun is a little bit different. Is saying that the light of the sun in the sun is united with the sun. Why? Because here is talking about the sun, not the way as it is a physical being. As it's a physical being, the physical light doesn't have its existence. But here he's talking about the sun, the way it's using its purpose. And the purpose of the sun is to give light. So therefore, the purpose is united in the sun and is one with the sun. And that's why he is using the example of ma'or, which means metaphor, which means the luminary. Why? Because this is the purpose of the sun, which is to illuminate. By the way, if anyone has any questions that you have difficulty understanding, please don't hesitate, unmute yourself and ask questions. As it is written that God created the greater luminary, meaning the very source of light. V'aziv v'hanitzoitz amispashet mimenu nikra oir k'mo shekosu vayikra likim la'oir yom. The radiation and the beam which spreads forth and shines from it is called light, as it is written, and God called the light day. When the light is within the source, within its source in the orb of the sun, it is united with it in absolute unity. For there, within sun, there is only one entity, namely the body of the luminary which emits light. Ki haziv v'ha'or sham etzem echad mamesh im guf ha'mo'ir ha'meir ve'ein lo shum metzius klal b'fnei atzmo. For there, the radiation and the light is absolutely one, being with the body of the luminary which illuminates, and it has no existence by itself at all. And this is what our Rebbe is using as an example to tell us that the same thing is also with the attributes that come out from Hashem. And similarly, precisely in this manner, and even more so, is the unity of the one hand. On the one hand, the attributes of the Holy One, blessed He, and His will and wisdom in the world of Atzilus, with no other hand, with on the other hand, His essence and being, as it were. On the one hand, we have the attributes of Hashem. On the other hand, we have the essence of Hashem, which is not defined by them. However, Hashem, the essence of Hashem, is enclosed with them. Who becomes clothed in them, in the spheres of Atzilus, and unites with them in a perfect unity. Me'achar shenimshechu ne'etzlu me'itoi izborech al derech moshel kederech ispashtus o oyer me'ashemesh. Since they derive and emanate from him, just as by way of analogy, the light is diffused from the sun. However, it says it's not a perfect example. Ach loi mamesh bederech zeh. Rak bederech rechoika v'niflo'o me'asagosenu ki govud rochov medarchekenu. This is the example that we use from the sun united with its light, is only give us some kind of understanding, but it's not a perfect example because Hashem really is totally above our understanding, because He's really not defined by any of the sephiros, and yet is one with them. However, God's unity with His attributes is not exactly in this manner, meaning like the fusion of sun with light, which is still within it, but in a manner which is remote and concealed from our comprehension, for His ways are higher than our ways. It goes back and forth. It says, nevertheless, despite its superior manner of unity, since one must modulate the ear, you have to make the ear understand somewhat what it is and what it's able to hear. Nishma v'nizboinen mimishal oira shemesh hameyuchad u'batel b'mekoiroi ve'eino oile b'shem b'fnei atzmei rak shem amokel levad. We can perceive and comprehend that just as in the analogy, the light of the sun, which is united with and nullified in its source, has no name of its own, only the name of its source. Kach kol midosav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu uretzoi chmasoi einon ois v'nikrois b'shemos elu klal. So too, all the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His will and wisdom are not designated and called by these names at all relative to Him. So the names is only for us. It's not He. For as far as Hashem's perspective, there is no differentiation between wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Is only one thing. There's only Hashem Himself, which is not defined by anything. But in our perspective, the perspective of the Nivraim, Elo legabe hanivraim elyonim v'sachtoinim, but only in relation to the creatures which are not, so the Rebbe's note, below the world of Atzilus, being the world of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiyah, these creatures being both higher and lower, she'avayosam v'chayusam v'anagasam sh'akadosh baruch hu mehave u'mechaye oisam u'manigam, which are brought into existence and given life and guided in their conduct by the Holy Blessed be He, who manigam who birtzayna v'chochmasay b'nosay v'daitay amislapshes v'midoysev akdashis. Through His will and wisdom and understanding and knowledge, which God Himself in His holy emotive attributes, such as chesed, gvura, and tiferes, and so on. As we said, it says in the Medrash, is using a Medrash that shows that God is conducting the world through these attributes. So he says, Kedeisa b'Medrash, as it says in the Medrash, Ba'asara dvarim nivra eilam, the world was created by 10 things. B'chachma b'svunu v'das v'chula, by wisdom, by understanding, by knowledge, and so on. Dichsiv, and the Medrash uses a verse that it says, Hashem b'chachma yosad eretz, koin and shomayim b'tvuna b'daita ta'imes nivku. As it is written, God founded the earth with wisdom. He established the heavens understanding, and His knowledge, the depth of the abyss, were burst open. So we see that the Medrash, that the world was created by means of 10 things, meaning the 10 spheres. This is what we say also every Friday. Some customs, the Chabad custom, Nusachi. We say before Kabbalah Shabbos, before Mincha, we say Kemaimar Eliyahu. From the Zohar, it says, "De apikas asar tikunin v'korinon lehoin asar sfiran." And as expressed by Elijah, Eliyahu, in the passage that opens with Pasach Eliyahu, and forms part of the introduction to Tikkunei Zohar, says, "You have brought forth 10 kunim, garments, and we call them 10 sois. Le'anoga behoin almin sisimin the lois gallion, the almon des gallion, through which to direct hidden worlds unrevealed, meaning the worlds that transcends mortal comprehension, the spiritual world, and worlds revealed, meaning the worlds that are accessible to mortal comprehension. Ubehoin is kasiyas, and through them you conceal yourself from created beings, so that they will not be able to perceive the divine life force that creates and vivifies them." This is the amazing thing when Hashem creates us, and Hashem uses the spheres, the attributes, the 10 spheres. Hashem uses them in order to create, in order to emanate us. And the same thing, Hashem is not limited by it, not even defined by it. This is something which is called, the Zohar calls Rosa the Vehaemuna. But yet, says the Alter Rebbe, this is something that we can somewhat understand, as the Kabbalists use the term that this is the light, that he used the example from the light of the sun, that is in the sun, it is one with the sun itself. This is the end of today's Tanya. And again, this is La'ila Nishmas, Kabbalah Sarah Basarach. May your neshama have an aliyah, and may we be reunited very soon with the coming of Mashiach. Please share, please subscribe, and if you want to get notified for all our postings, you can click the notify button, and we should have only good news. A good Chodesh, all the best.